Hello, my name is Emily Teague. I am a fashion and portrait photographer based in Brooklyn, New York, and today we're going to talk about creative lighting setups. If you're familiar with my work, you know I love playing with light and color, and experimenting is a big part of my process. So I figured I would show you a few examples of how I play with experimenting and creativity to create some unique looking light for portraits. Often when we have a few restrictions, it can actually help make us more creative. So in a couple of these setups, I'm going to be using household items in place of a modifier or in place of my light, just to show you what's possible. In each setup I go through, I'm going to show you exactly what I'm doing and what I'm thinking as I'm shooting, and we'll make some adjustments as we go. So let's get started using my strobe, my Elinchrom ELC 500, without a modifier, just bare bulb. And we'll use a shower curtain in place of a scrim. So this is going to really reduce the intensity of my light and make it a lot less harsh. And I haven't tested this out yet, so that way we can walk through the changes needed together. Okay, so we've got our first look here. I have my model Riley, also a dear friend of mine who is modeling for us today. And for this first look, we're using the shower curtain to diffuse that light, but I wanted to show you what it looked like just bare bulb. So currently I have my shower curtain pulled up, I have my light, bare bulb, no modifier, and we're just gonna see how things are looking. So let's take a test shot. Beautiful, so this is already looking really good to me. I'm currently at 1/200th of a second. My aperture is f8 and my ISO is 100, which is pretty normal studio settings for me. Things that I'm already liking about this image, the light looks good. I have this beautiful bit of highlight on her left eye, even though most of her face is in shadow. So as far as light placement, I'm feeling good about this. And I have it kind of off to the side of her, so you can see, if you imagine, most of this light is gonna be hitting this face. And she's getting just a little bit of light coming in where her nose goes down so that light can still come over, versus most of her face just isn't accessible to that light. But now that we know what it looks like with just nothing on it, why don't we bring down our shower curtain and see what that looks like. Okay, so let's look at this image. A lot of things that I really love and some things we need to work on. As far as lighting, I think this is beautiful. We've lost a lot of our intensity when we added down that shower curtain. It's also making the light a bit softer. If you compare from this last image, where you can see those hard lines, especially like above her collarbone, right below her eye, versus where we're at now, where it's just kind of softened those up. We still have that hard line underneath her eye here. You can see we've lost a lot of power, so I'm gonna raise my power on my strobe. I'm currently just at a power of 4. I'm gonna go to 4.5 and see how that looks. I'll take another test. That's looking good. I'm gonna raise it up just a tiny bit more. I also love how it's looking with the background now. Originally it was kind of this blue-gray. We're getting a little bit of purple in there too now, which I really like. So I'm gonna go up to 5. That's looking good. That's actually a little too bright for me, and even though this is pretty properly exposed, I'm looking at certain areas like right below her nose here, to the side of her nose, right above her forehead, and those areas are looking a little hot. So I'm gonna bring it down just slightly to about 4.7. Try once more. And that's looking great for me. So I would say right here, I'm pretty happy. I'll even go just a little bit lower. I'm gonna go to 4.6, which is close to where we were at before. And that's looking like a happy place for me. So I don't have anything that's too hot. I love that highlight right underneath her collarbone. That's looking really beautiful to me. And now I'm just gonna play around. I'm gonna get some shots, and then we'll adjust this slightly to change it up and make it a little more creative. And then one right at me. Beautiful. So a lot of things I like here. I'm gonna make some more adjustments just because this is looking pretty cool, but I wouldn't necessarily call it creative lighting. I think my version of creativity we're gonna push a little bit further. So I'm gonna make a few changes. One, as I'm looking at these images, a lot of the times if Riley's face is pointed too much in that direction. I'm losing that catch light. I'm just getting a little bit too much shadow on that side of her face. So to lighten that up, I'm just gonna bring in a white V-flat. So that will help a little bit, but again, that's not quite creative. That's still just me fine-tuning how I want this look. So to add a little bit of creativity, we're gonna get an orange gel or maybe a teal gel, something kind of cinematic feeling, and I'm going to cover my bare bulb with it. So now we've got our shower curtain, we've got a gel, we'll see how that looks, and we'll go from there. Okay, so things that I like, things that I don't like. Color-wise, I think this color is beautiful. I don't want her to be completely drenched in this one color just because it doesn't look creative to me. It more looks like I maybe don't have this image how it should be yet. So I'm gonna fine tune it a little bit. I'm also gonna add in a second color just to build on top of this look. So we started with our shower curtain and we're kind of just building up each time to show you how we can play with different kind of creative looks. So let's try a teal gel with this orange gel that we have, and I'm gonna try to make it so the teal gel is mostly on her, or maybe there's a little bit more of a balance. Let's see how it goes. Beautiful. So I have done a couple things to make this a little different. Instead of having my teal light right next to my orange, I took it originally to the front and I played with that a little bit. I wasn't super stoked with that, and then I took it to the side. So now we kind of have our orange light coming in from over here, and our orange light's at a power of 4, and then I turned my teal light down to a power of 2, so half of that, and I put it right behind Riley. So I'm getting a little bit of teal light coming in on her neck. We can see it right near her eye, which is a place where I love to have highlighted. There's a little bit on her nose. So to me, this is now looking much more like a creative portrait and something that kind of has some story and character to it. So I'm pretty happy with this. You could play around, and maybe if I played around a little more, I might want to get rid of that highlight on her nose, but have it coming on a little bit more, maybe on her collarbones, or if I turned her head a little bit more on her jawline could be nice if we moved her hair. But overall, I'm super happy with this, and that concludes our first look. Okay, so for my next creative look, I am using this old projector that I got used for maybe like $100 or less. It's pretty beat up, so just to let you know, you can use any kind of projector for this. And right now, I just have it directly in front of Riley and coming up from below. So the only thing that's bothering me right now, I think the light on her face looks really cool and interesting, but I'm not sure that I like having her shadow right behind her. Let's take a few test shots and just see how this is looking so far. And then as far as these visuals, I just typed in psychedelic visuals on YouTube and got this kind of like long moving psychedelic visual. So if you're interested, you can look that up, but let's take a few test shots and see how this looks. Okay, so looking at these images, I'm thinking a couple of things. One, it's a little bit dark for me. I think my shadows could be lifted quite a bit. Since I am working with constant light and not strobe, it's a little different, but my shutter is at 1/60th of a second, 1/160th. And I don't necessarily want to go lower than that because I have pretty shaky hands. So 1/160th is normally where I feel safe for my shutter. My aperture is at 5.0, so I know that I can widen that open a bit. I'm gonna go down to, let's try 2.8 and see how that's looking. And then my ISO, I've really had to push because I need as much light as possible. So right now I'm at 1250. Let's take another test shot just lowering my aperture and seeing what that looks like. And that's actually too high for me, which is great because that means I have room to play. So I don't mind keeping my aperture completely wide open like that, but I'm gonna take my ISO and I'm gonna lower it a little bit. And just as a reminder, the lower the ISO, the better image quality we're gonna have. So I'm now at 1000 for my ISO. And I think that looks really great. I'm super happy with that. The only thing, I'm not sure if I love her shadow. It doesn't bother me as much as I thought it would, but I'm gonna try moving my projector. And so that way, if I move it to the side, her shadow is gonna move as well. Let's try that out. Okay, so I've changed some things around. I've moved this over here. So now Riley's shadow is gonna start going a little bit this way. And I'm gonna be right here shooting right against this backdrop behind her. And so I'm not gonna see her shadow, but I'll get all this nice projection on her face. Okay, so this is what we were originally getting before we had made any of our adjustments on our settings or on our projector. And then this is what we got after we moved our projector to the right so that we could get her shadow a bit not so much behind her. And we also adjusted, we went from f5 down to f2.8. We went from ISO 1250 down to ISO 1000. And my shutter is still at 1/160th of a second. So these images I'm really happy with. I think they're really fun and playful. And because I'm using a video that's constantly changing, every time, every minute, every 30 seconds, however long, I'm getting a new visual on her face, on the background, and it makes it really visually interesting to have so many looks. So let's go through just a few more of these. And these were some that I just quickly marked as some of my favorites. And then what we're getting here, you see that teal gel is showing up on her face. I added in the light from my ELC 125, and I just turned on the modeling light. So I'm kind of mixing the constant light from my modeling light plus the light from the projector. And it's giving a pretty cool teal highlight to the side of her face, which depending on what colors we have in our background work really well. Like, I think this is a beautiful image. Looking at the one above it, I think this is close, but I don't like the shadow that her nose is creating, which is why we turned her a little bit and got rid of that shadow. So I think this is a pretty fun look, and I would say anyone who has a projector, or if you can get a cheap one, try this out, it's really fun. Okay, so for our third look, I'm gonna recreate something that I did in my last video on dramatic lighting that I experimented with on set and ended up really liking, so I figured I'd show you guys what it is. So I have a few different supplies for my arts and crafts portion of this video. I've got a snoot, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create a small slit inside of this tin foil to make a little stripe right there, and I'm gonna cover it and rubber band it with this orange gel. And I'm excited to show you guys what the results look like, but let's try this out. So first, I'm just going to cover this, and with the tin foil, it's very moldable, so I'll kind of hold that down. And I wanna create just about like a centimeter kind of thick line here, so let's see. If your audio is on, this is gonna sound great. And that's looking pretty good. So this is what we're getting here. Just something around those lines. It could be even smaller, honestly. And if we want to make it smaller, we can just add more tinfoil to it too. And then next I will get my gel and I'm just gonna rubber band it together. And here we go. Arts and crafts complete. Let's throw this on a light. Okay, so I've thrown my snoot on, and you can kind of see I've turned the modeling light on so you can see where the light's hitting. I'm really trying to get Riley's right eye lit up. So let's take a shot and just see how this is looking. Okay, so looking at this image, I think it looks really cool and really dramatic, and I honestly am pretty happy with it as is, but of course, let's make it better. So some things that I'm looking at, the shadow right behind her head is a little distracting. I'm gonna try moving my light a little bit more to her right, to my right, to get rid of that shadow a little bit. And then I like that we have the catch lights in her eyes. I'm looking at the shadow under her neck, and I think we could probably adjust that a little bit, but I think this is a pretty good starting place. And then it is a little bit dark for me. I'm still deciding how I feel about that, but I'm at f8 currently with ISO 100, and my shutter is 1/160. So I'm gonna raise my power just slightly on my light. I'm gonna go from 4.7 up to 5, so just a minor adjustment, and take another test shot. And I think that's looking really beautiful. I'm gonna now adjust my light and move it to the right. And take another shot. So I'm missing her now. I only get the edge of her, so I'm gonna adjust it a little more to make sure it's hitting her face. And with our modeling light on, we can see exactly where it's at. So right there is when it starts hitting her face. And let's take another test. And that's a really different look. It's not quite what I want because the background is now completely dark, but it's still looking cool. But let's play around a little more. I'm going to make sure that we get some on the backdrop too. So I'm watching her face, but I'm also watching my backdrop. Okay, so I've done a couple things. One, I have moved my light over to the right to try to have that shadow not directly behind her. I'm also shooting from just slightly to the left of her, so I'm gonna shoot where there's absolutely no shadow behind her, so I don't have to worry about that. I've also adjusted my settings a little bit. So I've lowered my shutter speed. So I was at 1/160. I'm now at 1/125. My ISO I've raised from 100 up to 160. And I dropped my aperture from f8 down to 6.3 to let in some more light. And the other adjustment, I've also powered up my light just a bit. I am now at 6.0. So let's try a test shot. Beautiful. Let's try one more, Riley. Let's have you look right at the light. Gorgeous. And let's check that out. Okay, so I think this looks really, really interesting. I love this kind of gradient of kind of light orangish pink up into the dark on the background. I think her face looks really flattering. I'm liking that the jawline shadow is still there, but it's not as oval-like as it was before. It's a bit more of a straight line. I think that looks really cool. Her face looks great, the lighting is good. So I think this is a really fun look. I'm gonna dial this in just by playing around a little bit more, but I think as far as where my lighting's at, where my setting's at, I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so we're on our last and final look, and for this one I'm using my Nanlite Pavo tubes just because I can't imagine doing creative lighting setups without using them. I use them all the time, and as I've been leaning more into color, I start playing with them a lot more. So let's look at what we have. I've put Riley in my bathroom here, and I've lit this space with 3 different Pavo tubes, and because it's a white bathroom, the light's bouncing all around. So our first Pavo tube is this really bright blue that I've placed right in the corner on top of a trash can, just leaning against the wall. And then we're balancing that blue and kind of sticking to similar colors with this lime green. Oh, it was balancing over there. And then right behind Riley, in the corner of my bathtub, I've put on this kind of orange Pavo tube that's going to hopefully give her some nice light on her back and just highlight her a bit. So let's see how this is looking and if we need to make some adjustments. Great, so let's look at some of those. So I think this looks really, really cool. I love all the different colors. This is definitely creative lighting. I think the orange looks great because we're just getting it right at the top of her collarbone right here and along her neck here, on her jaw, all these beautiful places. And it's also just affecting our background too. And then we have it right next to the door, which is being hit by our blue Pavo tube. So I think that contrast between the blue and the orangish red looks really great. And then this lime green one in the corner is painting this wall beautifully. And one thing I didn't mention before is I actually have the light above her on too. And because we're using constant light, we're getting quite a bit of light from that, which I really love. And so it's giving her a nice hair light that you can see right up here. Let's compare it to a shot where if we had it off. So Riley, if you wouldn't mind turning off that light, and we'll take a quick test shot. Let's look at that. You can see major difference. And this is pretty cool too, but I really like having that hair light so we're not just losing her hair to shadows. So Riley, if you want to turn that light back on, I think we'll keep playing around with that and seeing what we want to change. I just placed myself so I was either hidden behind Riley's head so you couldn't see me in the mirror, or I moved a little bit to the right and shot at an angle, kind of like in this, where you can't see me there. So a couple things I would do to these images: for the ones where you can see the light switch back here, I would remove that in post and maybe crop in just a little bit, just so there's no distracting elements. But I think this looks really fun and cool and definitely a creative look. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed those few different lighting setups. If you're interested in trying any of them yourself, you absolutely should, and I would love to hear how that goes. So keep me updated in the comments and I will be checking them. What I'm hoping is that this video might inspire you to think outside the box and try experimenting in all sorts of ways when you're preparing for a shoot or when you're on set. Let me know in the comment section any thoughts you have, creative ideas of your own, or of course, just say hi and I would love that too, and I'll see you all next time.